Hi, I'm Morgan. Welcome to Way of Living podcast, where you will hear empowering women talking about how you shouldn't feel stuck in an unfulfilling career and how to follow your dreams. Life is short, live it to the fullest, and I hope you will feel inspired by their stories. Transforming an idea into a side business takes courage and support. Nancy Underwood is a full-time teacher during the week, the mom of an adorable 2-year-old Alba, and during her free time, she is the person behind the brand Month of Sunday Journals. Nancy couldn't find the right products to keep her child's memories, so when she talked to her husband about what she wished she could find, he casually gave her the idea to create her own. After brainstorming, researching, and learning, the self-made entrepreneur launched her own brand of timeless journals where dads, as well as mothers, from single to same-sex families, in fact, any type of families, can write, stick pictures, and keep fond memories of their growing babies. In this episode, Nancy talks about the name of the brand, she gives some tips, and she shares her journey with us. Hello, Nancy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm really happy to finally get to chat with you about what you do. And I think it's really interesting to see someone doing something different on Instagram, especially because your business is a very British product. Even the paper is actually British.
Yeah. So everything is made, all of the different materials are made in Britain. And to be honest, that was partly because as someone who'd never made something before, I wanted to be able to see it and know where it comes from and not have to worry about it being shipped from miles and miles away. But what it's turned into is, I think, there's a really lovely story about it being made locally by small family-run companies. So yeah, it's a happy accident. But it does mean that now everything about the journals is made in England.
You told me off camera that your daughter is 2, and I read that you started this business after you had Alba, so your daughter. So it means that is it a 2-year-old?
Not even that. So I kept a traditional baby book, as most people do, for the first year, and it was just one that I got bought for my baby shower. Enjoyed filling it in, but I have always found that baby books are designed almost as if they're for babies rather than the adults that are actually filling them in, and then the adult children that will be looking at them when they're older. So it was fine, it served a purpose, but it was quite cheaply made and quite bright and garish. And then she reached 1 and I realised that there were still things that I knew I'd forget. I've got a terrible memory. So I'd just been jotting down on loose scraps of paper in the back of her baby book the odd words she was saying or the funny mannerisms that she had. And I said to my husband, I can't find anything out there that isn't just an ordinary notebook that will let me keep recording these memories in a structured way, but loose enough that it gives me the room to do it in my own way. And I also wanted something beautiful that I could then pass on to her. And he just said, it was literally over dinner, he was like, well, there's a business idea for you if there's nothing out there. And it really just went from there. So it launched just before her 2nd birthday. So we had our first business birthday last month. So we're just over a year old now.
Oh, wow. Congrats. Amazing.
Isn't it? When you sort of just muddle through and plod along and then suddenly it's a whole year old.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how moms in general, the moms that I had on this podcast, it always starts after they have kids. They just start something completely new. And I think it's really interesting how motherhood changed our views and perspectives and goals, you know.
Hugely. I think it gives you a drive that maybe you didn't have before. So for me, I maybe had ideas in the past, but you always think, oh, in the future, I'll do it in the future, or I'm not quite ready yet. And there's something about having, especially because I was creating something that I wanted in the here and now for Alba, it just gave me that sense of now or never a little bit more, maybe, because children are obviously the priority, so you can't spend months and months mulling over this idea. So I don't think I would have gone ahead and got started in the way that I did if I hadn't been a mum. And yeah, we're busier, right, than we are before kids. So that's the other thing.
So you are a teacher. Your day job is you're a teacher. So how do you juggle those two together?
It's not easy, is the honest answer. So at the moment I work part-time Monday to Wednesday as a teacher, and when Alba was younger it meant that the journals could be done during nap time and then in the evenings, and now she doesn't nap, so now it's trying to really find ways that I can work around her as well on a Thursday, Friday. And as it's grown, it is something now that takes up weekends, as I say, evenings. As a teacher, I'm lucky enough that sometimes I can come home straight from the end of school, do some journal work, and then do my marking after that. So it does mean that you end up working long hours. But my friend actually runs this initiative called Out of Hours, and her whole ethos is about how sometimes being busier makes you happier if your energies are going on the things that mean something to you. And I think that's the thing with the journals. Even the boring stuff, sometimes the accountancy, I'm learning through it, and so it doesn't feel like work. It's a juggle, but it's almost a hobby as well as a side project, a side hustle, whatever people want to call it. So yeah, at the moment, evenings, weekends, wherever I can find a spare hour really is the
As I said, you're a teacher. You have no knowledge in anything about making journals. So we're talking about products, looking for product, designing, the money side. So how did you start all of this?
I think I initially came up with the idea in the September. So September, what would that have been? It was 2019 last year, 2018. And then actually it was quite a short period of time because we then launched in the February. So not that long between conception and product launch. I suppose had a small amount of knowledge. I used to work in an advertising agency for a few years before I switched to teaching. So that didn't give me any knowledge about making a product, but it did give me, I suppose, a really basic grounding in the sort of things that the marketeers that we worked with would have been thinking about up to product launch. So I used to work with Maltesers was one of the brands, and they launched those teaser bars as when I was part of the advertising agency. So actually in the back of my mind I was thinking, right, what did they have to do to make that successful? But really it was just knowing I had a really clear idea of what I wanted the journal to be, because I was designing something for my daughter, and I think that's what helped me. So whereas if I was designing something that I personally wasn't going to use, I would have had to take longer to get to what that looked like. I had a really clear picture in my mind already. So the first thing I did was write a brief almost to myself of all of the things that this needs to include. The product development side took a lot of hours, a lot of late nights, but actually was the bit I enjoyed the most. So planning out the different pages and then testing them and tweaking the wording to make it work. And then I did a bit of research and found this brilliant small family-owned manufacturers in the Midlands. And they talked to them, got some quotes from elsewhere as well, but ultimately felt that they were a really safe pair of hands to take me forward. And the sort of business manager that I work with there is so good at taking me through the steps that he really is to credit for the fact that it came to life, because I think he had so much more knowledge than me of how to make a product that I sort of came with the idea, had the pages that I wanted. I got a great female designer on board to help me with the look and feel of it. And then my business manager, my manufacturers, really just took me through it step by step and made me feel safe in producing it. So we did, the first run was just 100. Initially I was thinking, do I just make 20? Are people actually going to want this? Do I just have 20 made? But sort of took the plunge, and I was thinking, surely I can sell 100 in a year. I gave myself a year to sell the 100. And yeah, they'd gone within a couple of months. So I just was a really happy coincidence, I suppose, but also just that other mums wanted the same thing that I wanted.
And I think it's really beautiful as well. It fits with, there is a market for it. You know, people are always, it's very minimalist.
The whole thing was that I wanted something that if we're going to keep these for 18 years, they still need to look beautiful in 18 time. And that's why they've got that kind of stripped back feel, and hopefully colours that won't go out of fashion or age. So yeah, that was always part of the plan as well, to keep it as classic as possible, so that hopefully our kids, when we hand them over when they're 18, don't look at it and think, oh, that looks like a relic from the 2010s. And so
Yeah.
I want it to be a part of people's homes. You can see we're decorating in here, so it's a bit of a mess, but I love having things up on the shelves, and that for me, I wanted it to be something that you almost like proudly display, and then enjoys it along the way. Yeah, so definitely that's I'm glad that you see that in the product.
Yeah, it's very, very pretty. What makes the journals specials or like different than others is the design, right? But how did you market it?
For me, it's three things. So the first thing is the whole pregnancy to 18 years thing. So there are other products that track kind of the story of your childhood, but they leap forward a few years each time, or they don't include the pregnancy. So I very much wanted it to be like a one-stop shop. I wanted, and obviously everyone says to you when you're making it, oh, but if you make a few books, then people will buy more from you. But that wasn't for me. Yes, maybe that would be a clever marketing tool, but it felt purer to keep it all in one place. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that this ageless, timeless quality to them. So the fact that they've got prompts, but they are gentle enough that you really tell that story of your child's journey through to adulthood in your way. So you can use different spaces for more writing or more pictures. The prompts are open enough that I'm not dictating to you what details you need to include about your child's life. It's just the prompts are literally just to help you structure your thoughts. But it's definitely meant to be the case that everyone's journal will look very different when they get to the end. You're not just filling in a one-word answer to 20 prompts, which is what I found in some of the books that I was looking for originally. Then really the third thing that was really important to me that I maybe don't talk about enough, but is to have something that goes outside of the normal nuclear family format. So at no point do I talk about mummy, daddy, parents, plural. It's very much designed to be, if you're a single parent, you can still fill it in. If you're a same-sex couple, you can still fill it in. I really wanted it to not alienate any form of family, because I just think straight away things like that are always talked. So you talk to the mum as a marketeer, always it's like, oh, this is for mummy. And I think, well, actually I have a lot of men that buy the journals that are new dads, that's their thing. They're as much into their writing down of memories as the mum is. And exactly the same with same-sex couples. I just think the minute you start talking about mummy and daddy, you're assuming something that just doesn't hold true anymore in our society. We don't all look the same, do we? The families nowadays.
Yeah, I didn't know that. It's a very good idea. But did you know that men were actually looking to buy those journals before you started it? No, you didn't.
No. So it was that I still, obviously my audience is still predominantly female. The stereotype holds true to a certain extent. But no, it surprised me how many men actually want, or actually women buying it and then saying to me, oh, but this is more what my partner will do. He loves recording the memories. And so I just think it highlights that we still fall into that trap, don't we, thinking that females are the sentimental ones, and that's not the case, which is lovely. How lovely that actually a lot of the time it's the dads who want to capture their memories in that way. I suppose I'm still finding the story that resonates with people. And I think my advice actually would be, I jumped straight into it, and I'm glad I did, because I think you can think about things for too long and then never actually get started. I definitely didn't do that upfront planning, which is silly given that the only experience I had was how to tell a brand story, and I hadn't figured out my own brand story. but I'm only really refining that now and thinking, okay, so this is what people love about it, and that's the thing that I should be pushing. Whereas at first, if I look back at my initial website text, it was quite descriptive, so it's sort of telling people what it is rather than getting them to buy into the story of the brand. So that's a mistake that I've made. I've left that not too late, but it's been something that I probably should have really thought about up front rather than learning as I've gone along.
The name of your brand is Month of Sunday Journal. Why and how did you come up with it? Because it's really hard to find a name for your brand, how to brand yourself, because then you can't just change it after 2 years and you're like, oh, it's a bit boring and no one likes it.
I can't take much credit for this, by the way. So I had a friend, a fellow mum, who I used to go to school with, but actually we sort of reconnected when we were both pregnant. And she initially started the journal journey with me. So I sort of had the idea, and she was going to be involved as a business partner, decided ultimately that it wasn't the right time for her. But when we were brainstorming names, we were literally in my living room with the toddlers creating havoc, and we just had a load of Post-its and just spent hours sticking them all up on my living room wall trying to come up with something. And she said, oh, have you ever heard of the phrase like never in a month of Sundays? And I was like, yeah, my family say that all the time. It just means a really long time. Like that wouldn't happen in a really long time. And so we put that up, Month of Sundays. And what I quite liked about it is that everyone mocks my family. My husband calls them Fullerisms, which is my maiden name, because we always speak in these weird, like strange English phrases, and a Month of Sundays is one that we've always said. So that just stuck really, and we just committed to it. And then I, with the logo development, then liked the idea of the phases of the moon mirroring that passing of time, and it just went from there. So it's definitely something that you have to live with for a while though, or at least in my experience. You know, like when you name your child, I don't know whether you had this, but you give them a name, and then for a good few weeks you're sort of looking at them thinking, but are they really an Alba? Or like you have to think. Yeah. And that's why I think the same with a business name. You almost just have to be like, okay, I think that's fine. And then you get used to it, and then it's too late to change it anyway, as you say. So, but I am actually very happy that my friend came up with that idea. So she will forever be credited for the brand name.
Do you find it, so apart from the time, because you're very busy, do you find anything hard about starting a business like that, something that you have absolutely no experience?
So probably two things. One, that's the consistent difficulty, I think, with running your own business, and the other one about the point that I'm at currently with business. So the first one, I always said that I didn't want to own my own business, work for myself or anything like that, because I didn't think I could cope with the inconsistency of it. And I always quite liked the idea of, right, you get a wage from a normal job, you know how much is coming in each month, you know, you just turn up, do your work, do it well, you'll be okay. And my dad sort of tried to start his own business, it didn't work. My husband's dad had a successful business, but then ultimately that got liquidated. So we'd had experience or seen the bad side of owning your own business. And I think what I find hard with it are those ups and downs. So you'll have a week where you've had record sales for no apparent reason. Maybe I've got some good PR, or the advertising is working really well and you're on a massive high. There's nothing better than hearing the pings on the phone when orders are coming in. And then you'll have a couple of quiet days. And I thought that Christmas was going to be really busy, but actually babies are born in spring and in September. And so Christmas was fine, but it was nowhere near as busy as I thought it would be. And so it's trying to not let that really impact you emotionally, to take it personally. And from talking to other business owners, I've got a brilliant collective of other mum-run brands that I'm a part of. We all say the same. You're on such a high one day, and then you can get into real lows the next day. So that's one thing. I think the second thing for me right now is that they've grown to such a point that it's probably as large as I can take in my current situation with my current funding. So you said about the money, actually, and I never answered that question. So I self-funded the first batch and then continued to just pump money back into it to get my stock and so on and so forth. And really, to move the business on now, I need to scale. So I need to be ordering larger batches of stock than I currently am. But I want to always keep with the British manufacturer. So you can't, if I had them made in China, for saying sake, I'd increase my margins hugely, but then my product would be so substandard compared to what it is now. So in order to keep my British manufacturer but get larger amounts, I need to look at investment. And so for me, that's kind of I have no experience of that. Luckily, I've got friends who have, so I'm talking to them and trying to get help there. But that's a difficulty there, is just when you hit the point where you've sort of grown it as much as you can when it's a side gig, and then how do you then take it to the next level?
Yeah. But how do you deal with those ups and downs? Because you just said, you're such in a high at some point and then it's very low. How do you deal with it?
I think it's remembering. I think it helps me that it's a side project, honestly. So I do wonder how I would cope if it was my full-time gig. I'm huge admiration for the women I know who do it as a full-time project, and obviously you've then got the time to pump into it, but then you haven't got that safety net of your day job. For me, I suppose it's just remembering to look at it across maybe a week, a month, rather than getting dragged down in that day, because it's rare that the sales are going to be bad across an entire week. And it's also knowing when to just put the phone down and forget about it. So that's probably how I deal with it. If I can sense that it's affecting my mood and I'm getting snappy and I'm taking it out on my family, and if I trace that back and actually it's to do with the fact that I've not made enough sales that day, I try to just leave my phone in the other room, be a bit more present, and just think it's this. And actually, my husband, again, good reminder, he always says this was meant to be fun. He started it because it was meant to be enjoyable, and the minute it stops being enjoyable, that's when you're not getting the payback that really is meant to be the biggest part of all of this.
Do you have any tips for anyone who wants to start a business?
So just generally getting started with any business. So writing that brief to myself was massively useful and important. So aside from what I've said about, I am a massive believer in just get things done. So done is better than perfect sometimes. So just get moving. If you've got an idea you believe in, get moving with it. But definitely, even if it's a service-based business or I'm trying to think, or something tech-based rather than a physical product like mine, I would say if you write yourself a brief, what that does is it stops outside influence corrupting that idea. That makes it sound more malevolent than it really is. But I think, or I'm sure from talking to other people, when you start out with an idea, the people around you are either going to believe in the idea but think they can tweak it and make it something that they would maybe prefer, or they are going to think it's a lot of effort and won't necessarily believe in it as a business plan in the first place. So the thing that I really came up against with the journal was a lot of people saying, oh, but why don't you just do it digitally? Why don't you just make an app? And I was like, but that for me just wasn't the point of it. The whole point was that it's something nostalgic and physical that you can touch and you can see the love that's gone into it. So I had to hold firm on that. And I think if I hadn't had such a clear brief to myself that I could come back to and think, no, that doesn't match what my original plan was, I maybe would have felt swayed and then potentially wouldn't have ended up making anything at all, because it would no longer have been that thing that I genuinely wanted in my hands for myself. And I think, again, that's sort of linked, but is another piece of advice. I would say try and make sure that you would want that thing you're making. Because if you don't, I'm not sure how you ride those ups and downs and you keep that energy going if it's not something that you genuinely believe in and would buy and pay money for or spend time on yourself.
Yeah. I found you on Instagram. Is this where you sell most of your product, or do you use other websites like Etsy or something like that? Where can we find and buy your products?
So I'm on Etsy, but it doesn't really, to be honest, for me, it's not a massive part of my business. So my website is monthofsundaysjournal.com, but all of my updates and marketing really is through Instagram. Also on Facebook under the same handle, Month of Sundays Journal. I'm trying to get better with Facebook. It's not something I use personally, so I find it hard to keep up with it. But yeah, Instagram has been a brilliant... It gets a bad rap right now because of the algorithm and everything else, but ultimately it's free marketing, and it's a free way to start reaching your customers, and then yes, they hook you into the advertising, but it's I think a really valuable tool. So yeah, so I'm there. So Month of Sundays Journal on Instagram, Facebook, and then really aside from that, I'm trying to do more things where I'm talking on panels or going along to my friends' out of hours. That's that business that I said supports side projects. Just to meet other people, but also it's always good to talk about your brand, isn't it? To redefine it or to give yourself clarity.
Yeah, and I know so many entrepreneurs, they're actually... their whole business is through Instagram, and I found this absolutely amazing and interesting, how to get started on Instagram and to actually make money out of this app. What's next for Month of Sunday Journals?
So I've got a couple of different product ideas that I would like to develop. For me, they have to be linked to the journals in some way. So that's always going to be the heartland of the brand. But other products that help you record memories as a family that can sit alongside the journals or be purchased individually. So that's something I'm sort of beavering away on in the background. But a huge thing for me now is to have a think about how I can scale. So hopefully, really the next year is about just reaching more people and getting the brand out there as much as I possibly can. And yeah, hopefully this time next year, being in a place where we've grown again as much as we have in the past year. So it's a real, I find now feels like a turning point where it's actually a business rather than just something that I'm casually doing. But I would love to, as I say, grow over the next year, think about how to scale. If that means outside investment, looking at what that looks like. And that will hopefully then allow me to make these other products as well that hopefully people will like as much as the journals. Fingers crossed.
One little thing that I wanted to ask as well, because at the beginning you said that you wanted the product to be from Britain, and because and you said at some point as well that if you got something made in China, it would be less expensive but less quality. Do you actually sell worldwide, or where are your customers based?
At the moment, pretty much all UK. We've got some independent retailers, shops around the world. So there's one in Barbados, one in Ireland, one in Canada, and then a few just in the UK. When people message me though, I can always give them a quote to ship internationally. That's another thing that if I scaled the business, it would mean that I can do that as a routine thing. I'd love to get translations done eventually. Actually, we go to France all of the time. My parents have a place out there where I think they're going to retire to eventually. So I always, when I'm out there in the little boutique shops and the markets, I think, it'd be really nice if there was a French version at some point. So yeah, mostly UK, but we do have the retailers abroad as well. And definitely I'd like to be able to ship worldwide eventually.
That's amazing. Well, if you do the translation, contact me, because I do translation as a freelance. So I can do that for you.
That can be added into next year's plans.
Exactly. But I think that's great. Thank you so much.
The 2-year-old has just started screaming mummy, so this is perfect timing.
Yeah, I heard her coming in, I think, at some point. So I was like, okay, I need to wrap this up. Quick. Mom life.
So far. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Voila, that's the end of this episode, and I want to thank Nancy for sharing her story. Please share this episode on your social media, and it might reach someone who is scared to start a business and inspire them to finally do it. Don't forget, life is short. Live it to the fullest.